The Mangru Report starts now. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the Mangru Report, coming to you from Palm Beach. A different kind of financial program on television, one that goes beyond the typical Democrat and Republican talking points and gets down to real issues. It's a program that seeks to uplift viewers with a positive message and real insight for your financial life. And now I'd like to introduce to you the Mangru Report panel of experts. First, we have from Europe Pacific Capital. He's a former member of English Parliament, John Browne. From United Bullion Group, gold and precious metals expert, Anthony Pulieri. And commercial real estate expert, Jim Knight. Now it's time for Taxation by Representation, which is being brought to you by the makers of Wave Shield. If you're concerned about the potential effects of cell phone radiation on you and your children and want to learn more about how to protect your family, please visit them on the web at waveshield.com. Now, a couple billion here, a couple billion there. I mean, what does it really matter? And as our government continues to tax and spend, there's a new measure that's up for vote in Congress on healthy school lunches for children. Now, some may look at the problem of childhood obesity as an epidemic, and there's a great need to ensure for the proper nutrition of our children. However, others look at this measure and just say more government spending. So, gentlemen, the question I have for you is, which one is it? Is this a necessary solution to an epidemic problem, or is this just more government spending?
It's a combination of both. I think it's, you look at both ends of the sword. Yes, there is an obesity problem in America. The ratio of obesity with adults, even with children, it comes down to less activity. And healthy food is really, your diet is 80% of your body complex. So your diet's really important. So I think it's important to get this under wraps, but it comes down to more government spending and more money that we're spending that we don't have.
Well, I'm lucky to have a good tailor because if you took my coat off, you'd probably find a pretty awful body structure. However, I think I agree with Anthony. I think it's a bit of both. I mean, here we do have government spending, and this is a time when all governments should be cutting back on spending, in my opinion. But the fact is that obesity amongst children is roughly 1 in 5. And that seems to carry on because when you get to adults, it's 34%, like one in 3 adults are obese. And we know that obese is bad and costly for health, and in the end, the taxpayer has to pay for that. And it's also bad for education. People who are obese do not perform well at school or at universities, and therefore it's bad and it's got to be stopped somehow. And if this spending, I admit, and I'm usually against this, transferring power or spending power from people to the government is usually a bad thing. But in this case, parents have proved to have a very bad record, and children have been very susceptible to trash food and fast food, which is usually very bad for you. And this is what's led to the problem. And I think if the spending is well targeted on healthy food, for one of the very rare times I would support this sort of action.
I also support this move. However, I feel it's important that they add some exercise and sports to this at the same time. You can't just eat healthy and lose weight without having a little bit of exercise to go with it. And I think it's important for our schools, and right now we're cutting back with the sports programs and so forth, and I think it's very important that we also keep that up at the same time.
I totally agree, and the sport is very important. And I also believe in contact sport. I think it's very sad that we're now getting really pussyfooting on sport and no contact and all that sort of stuff. Very bad mentality in breeding fortitude in people.
Now, one of the key aspects of this bill is that it only covers low-income children. And as here we are, as we're engulfed in a debate that is focusing on taxes in the larger part of America, we're looking at a situation where we're saying the government is playing class warfare on American citizens, whereby only the wealthy are going to be taxed more, or whether the wealthy should be taxed the same along with everybody else and get the same tax cuts. When you look at childhood nutrition and these school programs, should they be for all the children if we're going to spend the money, or should they only be for lower income children?
Well, I think the greatest area of need, sadly, is amongst low-income households. That's where the problem is. And low-income households tend to cut back on good food for children because it's more expensive, because they're on low income. I think a lot of high-income families in the United States are increasingly conscious of nutrition and the importance of exercise and these sort of things. I think I don't know the statistics, but I would think that the proportion of obesity amongst the high-income families is far, far lower. And so I think, you know, it's very rare for me to ever support an increase in government spending, and very rare for me to say that it should be discriminatory. But I think in this case, you have to help the weaker brethren. You know.
Well, it makes sense. I agree with him, total agreement with him when it comes to government spending is typically not the answer at all. But this is definitely the anomaly. It's the rare occasion. And you're right, in the low income, they're the ones that need it. The person that's living in $1 million home and if mom and dad are liquid and they own their own corporations or whatever, they don't need it. They don't need the help. But the problem is that when it even comes down to the low-income people, it's takes the food stamps out of the control of the family, and it's in control of the schools. That's something I think is unnecessary. I don't see how the schools, it's more control by the government, which is we need less control and we need more free enterprise.